In 2025, 100% of executives surveyed for the State of Resilience report experienced outage-related revenue loss in the prior year. You heard that right, 100%. 1 in 3 reported losses between $100,000 and $1 million from a single incident. For large enterprises, 1 hour of downtime regularly exceeds $300,000. Most of those businesses had the same plan when something broke. Figure it out when something happens. But that's not a plan. That's what every business says just before they find out what they're made of. If you've told yourself we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, this episode is for you. We're making the case for operational resilience, what it is, why most businesses wait until it costs them more, and how you can increase your system-led efficiency. That's the efficiency problem we're fixing in this episode. By the end, you'll have an immediate place to start. This is how you stop hoping your business can take a hit and start knowing that it can. Hi. I'm Summer, founder of Driven Connection. We help eliminate inefficiencies that impact profitability, expansion, and people. Let me take you back to the early 2000s. I was a new restaurant opening trainer for a major restaurant chain, part of a selected group of trusted employees that traveled all around the country opening restaurants. Over 3 years, I supported 7 openings and ran hundreds of training classes. There was one class that made people roll their eyes every time because they thought it seemed unnecessary, because they couldn't imagine when the information was needed. That was the class on how to accept payments when the electricity goes out, when the point of sale system goes down, or when banks themselves are having a bad day. If you were born before 1995, you already know where this is going. Before mobile card readers and tap to pay, you were out of luck unless you had a Knuckle Buster. The technical term was manual card imprinter. It was a heavy mechanical device that took a physical imprint of a credit card because back then, numbers were embossed into the card. The Knuckle Buster pressed the card against carbon slips of paper, capturing the number. Then you run it later when the system is back online. It wasn't uncommon for your knuckles to get busted when you took the imprint, and it was standard practice to have these in any building where credit cards were processed. Back then, that was system-led operational resilience, a heavy metal device and pieces of carbon paper, deployed by a team trained to use it before they ever needed to. Preparations and training classes like that saved businesses 6 and 7 figures annually when systems went down. That type of resilience and composure is key as you scale a business. Operational resilience, the formal concept you'll hear in boardrooms and regulatory filings, is your business's ability to anticipate, absorb, adapt to, and recover from disruptions while continuing to deliver for your customers. In plain language, that translates to, can your business take a hit and keep serving people? That's the standard, and many businesses, they can't meet it. The concept was formally named in 2018 when the UK financial regulators published a landmark paper on building resilience in the financial sector. But the building blocks, business continuity planning, disaster recovery, operational risk management, those have been standard corporate practices since the 1980s. What changed in 2018 was the recognition that it couldn't live in a binder on a shelf. They had to be embedded in how modern businesses operate today. On July 19, 2024, CrowdStrike, one of the world's leading cybersecurity vendors, running on systems used by nearly 60% of Fortune 500 companies, pushed a routine software update to its Falcon security platform. And it was faulty. Within hours, roughly 8.5 million Windows devices worldwide crashed simultaneously. Blue screens, systems that couldn't reboot. Every affected machine required manual, physical intervention. Airlines grounded flights. Hospitals lost patient records. Banks went offline. Government services across multiple countries went dark. It has been called the largest IT outage in the history of information technology. The global financial damage ran into the tens of billions of dollars. The businesses that recovered the fastest weren't the ones with the biggest IT budgets. They were the ones with tested rollback procedures, segmented deployments, and clear incident playbooks. Documentation that told people exactly what to do when the system stopped working. The ones still grounded days later had concentrated everything into one vendor, tested nothing, probably documented less. One update, one vendor, tens of billions of dollars, because too many businesses didn't have a plan for what happens when a vendor fails. In this situation, businesses learned hiring the best vendor doesn't always solve the problem when a system collapses. A single point of failure is still a single point of failure. Operational resilience loses the budget fight more than it should. It loses because it competes with visible P&L benefits, a product launch, campaign, a sales hire. Sometimes resilience looks like a cost. KPMG documented it directly. Investment in resilience is difficult to prioritize when competing against initiatives with obvious returns. So resilience activities get pushed to the next quarter, after the crunch, once we're past this next phase. But then something breaks, and you're not investing in resilience anymore. You're paying for the absence of it at emergency prices, under maximum stress, with your customers watching. Those stats look like $14,000 per minute for an SMB and $300,000 per hour for a mid-size enterprise. Here's what many leaders don't know. McKinsey tracked roughly 1,000 large publicly traded companies through the 2008 financial crisis and found that resilient companies outperformed non-resilient ones by more than 150% in cumulative stakeholder returns over the following decade. 70% of those resilient companies were still top performers years later. Resilience is a competitive advantage that compounds. When businesses treat it as optional, they are subsidizing short-term flexibility with long-term fragility. That's unnamed operational debt. And these ideals and thinking aren't new. Stoic philosophy had a practice known as premeditation of adversity, the deliberate act of imagining what could go wrong, not to fear it, but to be ready when it arrives. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Resilient organizations treat risks and impediments as system design parameters. This connection is often missed. Operational resilience gaps are inefficiencies that go by different names. A single point of failure is both a resiliency risk and an efficiency roadblock. When one person, one vendor, or one tool is required for a critical process, the business can be fragile and slow on a normal day and broken on a bad one. Manual workarounds that patch broken processes create daily waste and collapse under stress. What's held together right now will not hold when the pressure spikes. Undocumented processes mean every incident is treated as brand new. Wasted time when things are fine, chaos when they're not. And the human cost is burnout. When systems are brittle, accidents are frequent, teams live in permanent firefighting mode. Chronic unplanned work is one of the strongest predictors of burnout, turnover, and disengagement. If you don't invest in operational resilience, you are choosing to pay for burnout instead. Here's what your customers think. 63% of customers say they would still use a provider after disruption, if the response is fast and transparent. Most customers will forgive failure. They won't forgive silence, confusion, and chaos. A YouGov survey identified the 4 factors customers care about most when a disruption: facing the problem quickly, communicating directly and on time, compensating where appropriate, and apologizing honestly. This is a leadership and process investment. Trust is no longer about whether you fail. It's about how you respond when you do it. Here is how to start off your resilience register. In corporate settings, this is called a risk register, a documented inventory of the threats that face your business, ranked by likelihood and impact, and later, mitigation strategies. The Resilience Register is a simplified version to help start identifying and planning those impacts right now. This is the first entry point you can complete within hours, which will set up your framework if you're lacking one today. Identify your top 5 risks, real ones, the vendor you depend on completely with no backup, the team member whose absence would stop a critical process, a system that's gone down before, or a broken customer connection. Write down one sentence for each. If this fails, here's what we'll do first. That sentence can look like, if our payment processor goes down, we switch to a backup processor that's already integrated and alert customers via pre-drafted email templates. 5 risks, 5 sentences. That is your MVS, Minimal Viable System, the Resilience Register. This is how you'll start building tangible business architecture today. The businesses that know themselves survive disruption. The ones that don't discover their vulnerabilities until the worst possible conditions, mid-failure, in front of customers, with no plan. Now you know what operational resilience is, what it costs when it's absent, and what it's worth when it's present. The only remaining question is, when do you start so you don't have your own CrowdStrike moment? You're learning, you're growing, and you're building a business that can take a hit and keep from going down. I'm Summer Ames Prodan, and we'll see you on the next installment of Driven Growth.